date to recognize our military, our first responders, and all those that we lost in 9/11. So if you'd just take a moment, please. Thank you. Very, very special night for me. When I was appointed to the Mackinaw Island State Park Commission 12 years ago now, the very first note I got was from Dan Musser. Very first note I got, and it said, "Looking forward to working with you." And I'd met him a couple times prior to that in some other events, but I had no idea how the Mackinaw Island State Park Commission, Grand Hotel, and the village of Mackinaw Island were intertwined, and how just completely wrapped together they are. Of course, the hotel is independent, but there are 9 variances that every year the Mackinaw Island State Park Commission has to sign off on because there are encroachments on state park land.
Disagreements.
And it was always a piece of cake when Daniel was there. One of them is really tough. It's a drain pipe that exceeds out on our property. But in the 12 years now, I've learned a lot about Dan, gotten to know his family, and just thought it would be great to get him here to talk about the history, solve some of the mysteries, and with further ado, Dan Musser.
Thank you. Well, if it's okay, I'd like to sit if that's okay, but I'll try to speak up so everyone can hear me. But thank you, Bill, and thank you all for indulging me to talk about some of the things I love. My family, involvement with Grand Hotel, the hotel, and the island. So thank you. And I suspect all of you have an idea that the hotel was built by transportation interests with the idea of creating a destination to haul people to, not really per se being in the hotel business. I guess ultimately, luckily for our family, that was the case. But so in 1886, they started building the hotel, and so incredibly, on July 10th and 1887, they opened with pretty much the facade that you see today. Obviously, we've added wings and added on around it, but pretty much what you see was there then, you see today. Fast forward a little bit, they got out of ownership pretty relatively quickly. Our family's relationship or connection with the hotel started with my great uncle, William Stewart Woodfill, who grew up in Greensburg, Indiana, and suffered from hay fever. And I understand at the time the solution was to come north, which he did. And his first season was at the Arlington Hotel in Petoskey, which at that time had more rooms than Grand Hotel did. But after one summer there, the owner-operator said, if you're really serious about this hotel business, you should go up and talk to Mr. Ballard up at Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. And so he went home for the winter and came back in the spring and found Mr. Ballard and said, I'll work for nothing for the season. You pay me what you think I'm worth at the end of the summer. And that brashness or whatever it is, it kind of endeared Mr. Woodfill to Mr. Ballard. And Mr. Ballard really became my great uncle's mentor and kind of set him on his path in what he spent his life doing. As I can remember my great uncle talking about Mr. Ballard being, in my uncle's words, a real goer. He was, before we had advertisement or PR people, he was that person. He would create, when we had guests who would come for the season, he would have an event every night that Mr. Ballard would be at and kind of MC it and make it happening, and guests enjoyed that, and my great uncle learned from that and saw that. And so fast forward a little bit, he with a good Mackinaw name, LaChance, our auditor at the time, was able to buy the hotel from the estate, and pretty quickly my great uncle learned two things. Even in the roaring 20s, while the hotel was taking in a lot of money, it was also spending a lot of money out to make it. And I kind of thought, this is a crazy way to make a dollar or make a living. But more importantly, at least to my great uncle, was he learned that he really did not like partners. So he liked responding or reporting only to himself. And so he sold and took paper, commercial paper, and was going to live kind of the life of Riley and live in Europe and have a great old time. And of course, the crash came later that in the 20s, and his paper was worth nothing. And so he came back and foreclosed in 1932 and spent his life then trying to make the hotel better and prosper, and he did. Um, he learned, as I mentioned, from Mr. Ballard, how to promote. He I wouldn't say fabricated, but maybe he stretched the truth a little bit about if there was a certain movie star that might be coming to the island, he would hire someone that looked like that movie star to show up for a week or two. He got Ripley's to talk about how we had the longest porch in the world and we're the world's largest summer hotel, which I still don't know if that's either are true, but we keep saying it, so it must be. So he was very bright at all that, but he was also great at a couple things. Looking at one, he worked. He was able to see that, particularly after the Second World War. Well, I guess backing up on that, he decided to stay open during the Second World War, which a lot of our carriage trade type hotels like us didn't, and most of those that did not, around the Great Lakes and upstate New York and around the country, the wood frame structures like us built in the late 1800s didn't reopen after the war, but he somehow made it through. And I can remember my godfather, Mr. Rotter, who was his personal secretary and also our manager for a long time, talking about how we paid staff with room and board because that's all we had, and somehow he's able to talk to vendors into giving us food for not just staff but also for our guests, and somehow made it through the Second World War. And then after that, we were kind of the only bright lights in the Great Lakes, and so people found gas for their cars, tires, and came up to us, and we were open and did well. And at the same time, he was also able to see that the travel patterns would change, or were going to change with our type of place. That until then, we had guests that would come for the season with their staff from Indiana, from St. Louis, from Chicago, from Detroit, and would stay the season, which was pretty much July and August only. And he could see that with roads that were being built and were good, and cars that worked, and that the vacation time would be compressed, and we need to fill that void. And so after the Second World War, he booked a lot of conventions that we're fortunate enough to still service today, and really is the bedrock of, it makes our business, our summer seasonal business viable. Michigan Bankers, Michigan Hospital Association, the architects, the prosecutors, all these groups that he courted in the early 50s, we still, is kind of the bread and butter of what we do, and enables us to now lengthen the season and be viable as a business. He also worked with my wife's grandfather to secure the bridge. Obviously, the senator was the person that made it happen, but Uncle Stuart spent 2 winters in Lansing, forming a committee to help the governor Williams say that the bridge is viable and that it's possible. It's not going to fall. It's not going to be a folly. And he worked hard at that. He also worked hard. He was the first director or chairman of the Mackinaw State Park Commission to bring in professionals and start the interpretive programs that we have today here in Mackinaw City, but also on Mackinac Island, and really create the tourist enjoyment and value that we have today. He was the forerunner of all that. And I guess my side of the family started with my grandfather died when he was pretty young, and I never met him. And so my great uncle took my dad under his wings and said, I'll pay for your college education if you come work for me for 2 years after college. And kind of like the GI Bill for Grand Hotel for my dad. And he did. And he said, if you like me after 2 years and we like each other, we'll go on. And obviously he did. But my dad had a brief break with 1 year in the Army, but came in the 50s and started work full time when my great uncle was working on the fort and also helping the senator get the bridge built, all these other things. But he also stopped spending money on the hotel. And so fast forward a little bit to the early 70s, the hotel was in trouble. It was pretty shabby. And my dad, the first thing that he was able to do after convincing my great uncle to sell it to him in 1979, after working for him since the mid to late 50s, was to hire Carlton Varney, who owned Dorothy Draper, which is the oldest decorating firm in our country, to start spending money on the hotel and refurbishing it and adding amenities and restaurants and services for our guests. And that culture that Dad started, that's what I learned, and that's what I think I hopefully put a little gas on and have kept going with. But Dad was great at he was a wonderful taskmaster and would walk around with a pen and paper in his pocket every day, and if there was anything wrong in the hotel, he would make a note, and we all knew about it, and we tried to make it right. But he also, as I indicated, was a great, he started this culture of trying to improve the hotel every year. First with Mr. Varney, we started then, we added the second nine of second nine of woods, bring 18 holes for the first time to Mackinac Island, and really I felt, brought the hotel to the next level, which I was just, fortunate to be part of, obviously. My siblings and I, we all worked in the family business growing up. My oldest sister, Robin, spent, like all of us, doing various jobs. I remember her coming back after working at the front desk, trying to convince a honeymoon couple that was sharing a bath with a family of 6 that this is going to be a great experience. Whereas later, when I had that same opportunity, I kind of relished it, and I like, give them a basket of fruit or, a bottle of wine or something, make it work. She just she felt bad for the family that made the honeymoon couple feel bad. She felt bad for the honeymoon couple that was upset. And so she didn't really cotton to our business too much, and had a wonderful career in life down in Ann Arbor with a bookstore there. My next oldest sister, Mimi, was really kind of the heir apparent as far as running the hotel, in that after college she moved to Boston and worked for Ritz-Carlton, which at the time was kind of the creme de la creme of hospitality trainment for young managers. And at the same time, she also worked in the markets there, the flower market and the produce markets in Boston, and learned what the nicer hotels and restaurants wanted and needed, and all of that she brought back to the hotel after a couple of years. And she also realized pretty quickly that she would hate this. She would hate talking to all of you and you looking at her. She would freak out. And she didn't like talking to big groups at the hotel, and so, but she had a wonderful passion and great skill, and she quickly suggested, well, maybe, I think she kind of told my dad that we should take all the shops that we had, all the retail space that we had, that we at that point all leased it all out at the hotel and also downtown, and we should take that over and put our name on it, our sensibilities, our brand on it, and slowly took over all the shops, but at the same time also took over with her experience in Boston with food, and she helped plan all of our menus, from all of our restaurants, everything we did all winter long with our chef. And fortunately for me, she also took over all of our weddings, because at that point in time, you know, we didn't take weddings unless you lived on Mackinaw and you married someone from Mackinaw and you went to church on Mackinaw. We didn't, you know, we didn't do weddings, but obviously destination weddings has become a huge thing for places like this. And she could see that was changing. And she said, I would love to take this over. And she had a wonderful skill to talk to the mother of the bride, and I did not. I like talking conventions that I had an idea they might come to us for 20 years, not one and done. But she was wonderful wonderful, pretty much everything beautiful at the hotel she had a hand in, whether that's our gardens, the retail areas that she did, and all of our menu plans that she worked with our chefs on. And then my experience, I started like my sisters, pretty young. My first job was raking sand traps on the front nine, which is the only nine we had at the time, but for 75 cents an hour. And but the real pay was Mr. Dufenau, who was our golf professional, wonderful gentleman for a long time, would give me a full-size candy bar at the end of the day, and I could pick out whatever one I wanted, you know. So as a 12-year-old boy, that was a pretty big deal. And along the way, I worked in the kitchen, I worked in the bell stand, I worked pretty much everywhere except for the stables. I never worked there, and I hope to never work there. Along the way, I've had wonderful mentors. The first, and I feel when I first realized, I guess maybe looking back, I realized that I truly loved the business was working in our kitchen. My first job was working for our food purchaser and also butcher, and Mr. Hatfield, but affectionately known as Butch. And he taught me the basics of at least the kitchen operation, is that it needs to be clean. We need the basics every day. We need fresh produce. We need fresh products so the chefs can do their jobs. And he would every day call to the dock. And ironically, now my wife and I own the company that brings all the food over every morning. But he would call down the dock and say, butter and eggs, and hang up the phone. And of course, they knew what he was talking about. We need this produce. We need everything you have fresh to us immediately, as fast as you can get up the hill to us. And he was one of my first mentors in the business. But when I realized I liked it was we used to have what was called the chef's table, and I think some of us might remember that. Some places like us had a big table in the middle, in our case, in the middle of the kitchen, where the entire staff, about 100 in the kitchen, would eat about 4 o'clock or 4:30, family style, and then obviously we'd clean up and then get ready to serve our guests that night. And it was, you would sit in order of your job. And except for the first day, you got to sit next to the head chef. So the first day I thought, this is great, gosh, I got first dibs at the entree, big steak, and I didn't really want the green peas, and everything else went down the line. Of course, the next day I was down with the pot washers, and I realized, well, geez, I guess I like green peas because that's all left over, But at that point also, it was the first time in my life I got to meet people that were way different than me and had different life experiences and world experiences, whether that's economically, way diverse crowd, life experiences of different countries, different ways of life, and that's when I, looking back, realized I love what we did and what I did. And so from there, I worked in the bar a fair amount. I was the first to start our admissions program. We used to have as many as 5,000 non-guests a day walk through the building, and which made it pretty much impossible for our overnight guests, the ones that were paying the freight, to sit in the parlor or enjoy any of the services we had. At the same time, I also was a bellman on busy turn days. I started at the front desk when I was about 16, when it was still upstairs and not computerized. Um, Fast forward a little bit, I was able to, with Mr. Hewlett, who was another mentor of mine and still is, and still works for the company, helped me computerize our reservation system and, 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 and try to take advantage of, I mean, all of us understand these short seasonal businesses that we all are familiar with. But in our case in particular, to make the most out of every guest room we had and every possible revenue source we could find, because every room that's not rented, it's a perishable inventory. We can never resell it. And for us with the compressed season, we had to make advantage of every room we had, and by computerizing, we could actually keep count of how many fancy rooms we sold and non-fancy rooms, and Lakeview and non-Lakeview. But more importantly, along the way, what the biggest mentor I had was my dad. And what I enjoyed and loved was, for 30 years, I got to spend my days with my dad working, usually pretty early morning, looking at our guest arrivals. And we would look at everyone checking in that day and make a plan. We have now almost 400 guest rooms. When I started, we had 286, but they're all different. And so we have to assign them. We have to figure out what is the right fit for each person. And obviously, if someone was there on a special occasion, we tried to make advantage of that and recognize it with flowers or a bottle of wine or something. And then I would generally I'd take rounds and walk around the hotel, whether that was, as my dad always said, it was management by walking around. And whether that was up on the guest floors or out on the property or on the front porch talking with guests. And then really the highlight every day was lunch with my dad in our main dining room. We would sit kind of towards the front of the room, and we had a deuce there, and we had, before cell phones, we had a landline, and we'd call department heads. And so whatever the issue of the day was, if it was food and beverage, we'd bring out the chef or the beverage manager, and we would talk about those things and try to resolve and make a plan going forward. And always, Mr. Hewlett was in the circling around, telling us what to do or not do, and still is. But all those years, I enjoyed so much, and I learned so much from my father of trying to create this culture of continuous improvement. And over the years, we were able, as I indicated, add on the golf course, add a wonderful restaurant there, Woods. We were able to purchase from the Orr sisters, the then French Outpost, now the Gatehouse, and turn that in with great help from a variety of people to make that into a little more food-centric, less bar-centric per se. We added a sushi bar there. We were able to get the concession at Fort Mackinaw, the tea room, which enabled us to do evening functions in a way that we weren't able to before, which really helped with our convention business. We continuously added on rooms. Like I said, when I started, took over reservations, we had 286 rooms. When I left, we had about 400. By the East End, we added the Milliken and Williams Suites, along with a few other rooms. And then we went up on the 4th floor, the entire building, and then added our Millennium Wing in 2000 and 2001 with 46 guest rooms, and also a 300-person addition to our main dining room, and maybe even more importantly, new boilers and new water system and intake for electric for the entire facility. And all of that was fun, and we enjoyed it, and more importantly, I felt that it was important to show to our guests that every year we had something new for our new guests, and also for returning guests, that there was something exciting happening, and hopefully that new guest would become a returning guest. And so that's kind of our story, our history at the hotel. And as we got closer to selling the hotel, my sister and I, we we struggled with H-2B visas that I'm sure everyone is familiar with here in town as well, that it became such a lottery and such a crapshoot on what you may or may not get. Became, quite frankly, I couldn't sleep at night, a lot of nights, thinking about it, as it built up to whether we were gonna get visas or not. And also, you know, we own one of the largest, if not the largest, wood frame structure in our state. It takes immense capital every year to not just keep it up, but also improve it and make it better every year. And so when we made the decision to start considering selling, when we were able to find a potential buyer in KSL that has over $5 million in assets, has the ability to obviously reinvest in a way that we could never, but also owns and has control over 150 hotels in our country and other places that can augment. It doesn't solve the H-2B problem, but it can solve it on a short-term basis from year to year. If we don't get maids this year, they can augment it. Or they don't get waiters one year. They can do it in a way that we could never do. And so on top of that, their ownership of Davidson Hospitality that runs the hotel now, that I've known for a number of years. I've known the senior management for a number of years with various other groups that I'm involved in. That they are hospitality people, and they get it, and so I feel it's in good hands for hopefully another 100 years with this new group. And they call me Chairman Emeritus, which means I don't do a lot, but they call every now and then, and I try to help, and obviously always will help with anything Grand Hotel, because it will always be part of our family. And you know, since then, and I didn't realize I would personally miss the business community. We were fortunate enough to buy Shepler Freight Business and Arnold Freight Business, combined the two a couple of years ago, and so I'm still in the business community on Mackinaw, which like I said, I didn't realize I'd missed, but I'm glad I'm part of that, and in that way, hopefully serving our community too. But I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about the things I love, my family, and the hotel and Mackinaw. So thank you, and I would really welcome any questions that you may or may not have. Yes, sir.
Yeah. Who came up with the concept of the cupola? I have a couple part question here. The cupola transformation.
Yeah.
Second part, what do you miss most about the hotel? Third follow-up, what do you miss least about the hotel?
Well, the cupola, you know, it was an observation deck, and when President Ford came in the late 70s, the Secret Service was up there with these long rifles and stuff, and I remember as a kid thinking, that's crazy. That's like the only time we use that space. And so Dad and I started talking about what could we do with it. And ironically, right below where the bar the bar itself is right now, Mr. Oliveri, our beverage manager, lived. So our bar manager lived in that space, and it just kind of organically said, you know, why don't we make it a bar? And with Mr. Varney's help and a lot of structural engineers' help, we were able to prop that thing up and make it into the bar that it is, and you know, great view and wonderful spot. What I missed? What was the next one?
What do you miss most about the hotel?
I miss I miss our guest interaction, but I really miss the day-to-day interaction with our staff. Now when I walk in the building, I think it's in a way better, because I think they're not afraid I'm going to fire them. So they're very nice to me now. So I still have it, but not on a day-to-day, and I miss that part. What I miss the least, I mean, it was an all-encompassing job, and we talked about Grand Hotel at Christmas dinner. We talked about Grand Hotel every day, and it's nice not to. I love the place. I love Mackinaw. I love everything about it, but it's also nice not to sleep and dream it.
Thank you.
I have one thing. I remember your father taking my husband and I through the hotel, early 70s, maybe 75, 76.
Yeah.
and took us down to underneath the kitchen.
Yeah,
And it was, I know you've done a huge amount of
It was awful.
restoration under there.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it was downright scary.
Yeah.
We thought the kitchen was gonna come down on top of us.
well, you know, a lot of these cottages on Mackinaw are, you know,
Yeah.
pulled up by cedar posts.
Yeah,
Well,
and ours was
so was
too.
Grand Hotel, and the kitchen was too. Well, fortunately, there's a lot of cement and reinforced cement now on everything.
Dan, talk a little bit about the making of the film, making of Somewhere in Time.
Well, you know, that was written with the Del Coronado in San Diego in mind, and but fortunately, at that point in time, we didn't have digital capability to erase all the skyscrapers and busy stuff behind the town. And so they started looking around, and the Michigan Film Commission, somehow the producers got a hold of them, and they said, there's a big white hotel in Michigan somewhere, and they said, oh yeah, you should talk to Dan Musser, my dad, who was on the Travel Commission at the time, and they came in the middle of the winter, and my dad said, get to Chicago and we'll fly you up here, and these guys from California showed up with a blue blazer and loafers in the middle of winter, and you know, it's 0 degrees, it's snow, we have the carriage up at the airport, we come, they're freezing. But I remember turning that corner where you can see the hotel by Mr. Manugin's house there, that the money guy looked at the other one and said, this is the spot. This is it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, we got to know Chris Reeves and Jane Seymour. Oh, and it was a wonderful experience, and it's been a great thing for the hotel and the island.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask the same question that Bill asked about the movie. Thank you.
And of course, it was a total flop in the box office, but it's been ongoing in the romantic
Yes.
world. Yeah,
Yes.
that's what we do. So it fit us well.
When we stayed, thanks to Mackinaw Associates, special deal. But anyway, the real high point that just rounded out the experience for us was Bob Taggett,
Oh, great!
the
Yes, yeah.
historian. I hope he's still there.
He is still there.
He was fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob Taggett is our resident historian, and he started as on the dock, and I kept meeting him as I was coming on and off the boat, the ferry boat, and he would just talk like he does. Well, though, and he knew more about the hotel and history than I did. And I finally said, I don't know what it is, but just come see me at the hotel tomorrow, because this is not the spot for you. And we tried him in sales. He was awful at it. We tried him all, and finally said, you love the history of this place. You love the history of our type of place. Let's just make that your job, and that's what he's been doing, and still does for the hotel. Yeah, and we're one of the few hotels in the country that has a resident historian.
That's
The
great.
Green Barn, I think maybe the Homestead in Virginia does too. Yes, ma'am.
When we were there, there's an apartment that says, apartment of the President of the United States.
Correct.
I was wondering, do you leave it open in case, like, President Biden, like, wants to drop in?
Absolutely
or-
not. We try to rent that thing every night.
How many presidents have been there?
Absolutely no, none of them. My great uncle, that was open. That whole area was open from the parlor up for 2 stories, and there was a balcony that kind of looked down like I don't know if you've been in the Brown Palace in Denver, but anyway, it was, I guess, really pretty. But he filled it in because there was word that FDR might come, and he didn't come. But he made the presidential suite. And Mr. Varney changed it to the apartment of to make it seem fancier. But no, we'd love for a president to come stay, but with today's security, I'm suspecting with our wooden walls, and probably not.
Just curious,
Yeah.
thank you, thank you.
Others?
Yes, sir.
How are you able to maintain the culture of the Grand Hotel experience? This is just special when you go in there, everything about it. How do you do that?
Well, my dad always said that it doesn't cost us a dime to make you put a coat and tie on at night, but it changes the feeling and the atmosphere. And I think it still does and will as we go forward. I mean, it's not for everyone, for sure, but I think on special occasions, it obviously, it works and sells. And I think that sets a tone of respect and, I don't know what the right word is, but it creates a tone that carries through. And hopefully, and I believe the new ownership group has that same sensibility that, you know, there's some things you do and some things you don't. And obviously, we are open to change, but tradition is also important too.
Ambiance.
Yes.
It's ambiance.
And whether that's fresh flowers, cut flowers in the parlor, or live music, not canned music, I think all those things add to that feeling and sensibility. Yes, sir.
I heard once when they first built that hotel that they built that in 90 days.
That's what everyone says. I mean, it's incredible to me. They cheated. I mean, they had the foundation in before the spring of 1887, and they milled the lumber over here in Sheboygan and brought it over. So it was geared up to build, but still, I mean, I can barely get my bathroom redone in 90 days, right? Let alone the hotel, yeah.
The number of people though.
Well, supposedly there were 400 people working in a tent city down where the tennis courts are, where the school and tennis courts are today building. I mean, you can't find 400 carpenters today anywhere, right? At least in one spot. Yeah.
There's a
Yes.
question, oh, sorry.
Yes.
There's a question online about what changes the new owners have made that were the biggest surprises and delights.
Biggest delights were right away, and that the new owners did to reinvest in the hotel was the first thing they did was employee housing, and put money into our staff housing, that we have more employee rooms and guest rooms, which is kind of I think everyone in the room might understand, but a lot of, when I talk to groups, sometimes they don't realize that. And you know, we had a plan to redo all of our guest bathrooms. We were about halfway there, and we had about a 10-year plan to finish it. They did it in one winter. And I don't love everything they did. I don't love all of the things they picked out, but it is so much better than we had, and they did it in 1 year. Was so impressive. And the pool they put in over $10 million. I loved our old pool. I love the new pool even better. And I think they did a great job with it. So I think the hits keep coming. You know, like I said, I don't agree with every aesthetic change or pick they made, but for the overall, I'm very impressed by what they've done. And I know what they have in the pipeline. I think it's all good. So, yes, sir.
You alluded to when you first started to go on the grounds, you know, like, because people were using the front porch.
Yeah.
And that was such a interesting thing, and it turned into kind of a good revenue source for the Grand, didn't it? But it was.
Yeah.
Got
Got my kids through college.
But it was kind of started to just kind of keep it to the guests, you know. You thought maybe people wouldn't use it so much, or you know, wasn't it like $1 at first? Or
$2.
$2. And what
$2.
year was that? 82?
Yeah, about right in there. Yeah. Yeah, late 70s, early 80s. Yep.
And it just blossomed from there. When you started charging, more people wanted to come, right?
We got aggressive. We started charging $15, and it went way down. And 10 seems to be kind of the right number, the fair number. You know.
I have a question about you seem to have an incredible staff of people that return. At least that's been my experience in the years I've been on the island. They return to the island. Some of those folks have come back for 20 years, 25 years.
30, yeah.
Talk about, and some of those, talk about that, how, I mean, why they come back and why that staff seems to be.
Well, and I've testified in DC over this fact that, you know, the whole program, the HGB program, is kind of the far right hates us and the far left hates us. And the far left feels that we're indentured servants we have. And my point has always been, well, if we're so awful, why do we have ladies and gentlemen that have been with us for 30 years? I mean, obviously we're doing something right.
Thank you.
And,
Yes.
I like, the question earlier was what I miss. I miss interacting with those staff members every day. I'm still fortunate I get to see them because we're still on the island and it's still, part of our life, but, they're part of our family and always will be. Yeah. And I think that's what makes part of the special charm that makes Grand Hotel Grand Hotel. Yes, sir.
You said earlier you went from about 280 rooms up to about 400. Is it maxed out? I mean, is anyone ever looking at the neighbor, will you sell me your property? Are they pretty much maxed out?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a former innkeeper. There's never enough guest rooms. But yeah, I think it's pretty close. It's pretty close. Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
Do you have any ghost stories that you can share?
There are no ghosts at Grand Hotel.
Only down the basement.
If there is, I'm gonna lie about it, and there isn't.
You mentioned several times that your family is what's most important to you. Tell us a little bit about your kids, your wife. What does your family do?
Well, we're very blessed. We have 6 children. We live in Ann Arbor, Michigan, in a house that you well know. And we share a history of the same house in Ann Arbor. But we also still kept our homes on Mackinaw, and it's still very much part of their life and my life. My wife, Marley, is from St. Ignace and has several relatives, a couple here tonight, or at least one here tonight, and so we're part of that community as well. And she's I think a lovely artist and accomplished artist and a wonderful person.
Good, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Back in the day, when I was a lot younger, I used to be able to pay $10 to go swim at the Grand. Are you still able to do that by any chance? I'm sure it's not $10.
No, the new group has decided that they want, if you join the club, which is expensive, you can come,
Okay.
but you can't come for the day.
Okay.
Madeline Rexer will teach you how to sneak in.
This woman right here.
Years ago. I mean, thank you. So many years ago, I can hardly remember. But, yes. Thank you for that, Kevin. Okay.
Well, the new group put tens of millions of dollars into the pool, and so they feel, I think appropriately so, that
Right.
it's gotta be reserved for the guests first.
Precisely.
But anyone can buy a membership, but like I said, it's kind of expensive for the season to join. Right or wrong, that's a new plan. Unless you sneak in.
You're still kind of sneaky.
No, I'm not.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
One thing that